This morning, I had the pleasure of speaking with an incredible group of leaders about the importance of public, educational, and governmental television, also known as PEG, or Cable Access Television.
Yeah.
From Falmouth to Framingham, Pittsfield to Provincetown, Boston is here, Worcester is here, Springfield is here, all the way down to the smallest communities in Massachusetts. Everyone came to talk about this threat to local cable access programming. Everyone here wants to make sure that everyone in their community have their voices heard. And this was an opportunity for their voices to be heard because of what is going on at the Federal Communications Commission. In this era of media globalization and consolidation, PEG stations give viewers critical information about their communities and offer an important platform for local residents. Massachusetts residents watch PEG channels to monitor local city council meetings, receive the latest news from nearby college campuses, hear about critical emergency alerts. With 220 PEG organizations in Massachusetts alone, producing anywhere from 20 to 100 hours per week of programming, PEG channels connect us to our communities, and they enrich our lives every single day of the year. Last November, when I hosted a congressional hearing in Merrimack Valley, following the explosions that affected homes and businesses in Lawrence, in Andover, and North Andover, it was the local cable access channels that stayed and then rebroadcast the hearings and all of the follow-up that was going on in those three communities, because they are local. Even though we have statewide media organizations, they cover all 351 communities. These local cable access channels, they cover the communities that they, in fact, are responsible for. And they're the ones that people turn to during crisis. They're the ones that people turn to find what the local activity is that could affect their families' lives. That's what happened up in Lawrence and Andover and North Andover. When all the Boston channels pull out, the cable access channels are still there to give the continuous information about what is going on in the community. Well, today, community television faces an existential threat. The Federal Communications Commission has proposed a rule change that would allow cable companies to shirk their obligation to the communities where they operate. Under current law, towns and cities across the country and the Commonwealth are permitted to require, as part of the cable franchise agreements, the cable operators meet demonstrated community needs by setting aside channels for PEG stations. Yet, the FCC's current proposal would allow cable operators to assign a value to these channels and then subtract that amount and the value the operator places on any other in-kind contributions from the franchise fees the cable operator owes. What's in jeopardy for Massachusetts PEG stations? Potentially tens of millions of dollars in funding that otherwise would be used in the community. And as a result of these proposed changes at the Federal Communications Commission, local governments in Massachusetts and across the country would be forced to decide between supporting local PEG channels and supporting other critical institutions serving the public good, like schools and public safety buildings. That's a Sophie's choice, and it's just not right. And we're here today to say that the Federal Communications Commission should not imperil Americans' access to community television. As local newspapers and other sources of local information continue to struggle, we should be exploring ways to expand and not subtract that the ways that the local residents have to learn about their communities. And we do know that local newspapers increasingly don't have the resources that they used to have. But we can't allow for the local cable access channels to lose the revenues they need in order to ensure that that flow of information continues into the homes of everyone in every community in our state. This access is worth fighting for. It's worth protecting. And that's why I have led a letter to the Federal Communications Commission with 10 of my senatorial colleagues. And I've personally spoken to the FCC, urging it to cease any rulemaking that would damage PEG channels. The FCC should work for communities, not powerful cable companies. That is what they are sworn to do. That is what the contract says that they want to do in a community, to serve the community. And so that is what the Federal Communications Commission should be all about. And so a movement across the Commonwealth and the country is growing and echoing this call. And together we're saying loud and clear that community television must be preserved. And here, representing the elected officials of all 351 cities and towns, I give you the great mayor from the city of Medford, Stephanie Wincini. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. I want to thank Senator Markey for convening this amazing group of people this morning so that we could really hear from the people that know what's really going on in our cable access channels. You guys are amazing, and you have some wonderful comments that I'll share a little later. The FCC's proposed rulemaking seeks to cap the current franchise fee at 5%. However, it looks to offset the payment by in-kind items such as market value that they determine, such as PEG channel capacity. This offset could be detrimental to local cable services that include government, education, and public access. Funding is needed to staff the operations of these centers that provide education to the public on how to use the equipment, how to stream live to social media, as well as developing community programming. Just last week in the city of Medford, we held a 2-hour hearing on our Medford Square revitalization. Who was there from gavel to gavel? It was our public access channel that recorded the entire event. And then the people that are unable to come, whether they're working 2 or 3 jobs or can't leave their home, they're able to see what's going on in their community and how then they can lobby for certain things that are going on. But I want to share a couple of the comments that I heard a little earlier in the last 2 hours. This is the last bastion of net neutrality. They speak for the voiceless, the Cape Verdeans, the Haitians, all the minority segments of our community. These stations are promoting, bringing safety nets to these communities, and allowing their voices to be heard so they can better connect with our cities and towns. Youth programming, after school, summer programs. We at Medford High School also have day classes in our center. So our kids are wanting to become part of the creative community of our state. Community news, better educate the community. When all is said and done, our cable channels, a big job that they do is really educating our members, not trying to sway them one way or another. It's to educate them so that they will make sound choices, whether it comes to elections or referendums or CPA going on a ballot. It's to bring information to the public, to your home, so you can watch it at your convenience. And a couple of other things, freedom of speech. Where else do you get the freedom of speech but on these cable channels? We see it firsthand in our city, and I know across the state. We experience it where it's really, you're able to say what's on your mind, and nobody says you can't. So these really are the last bastions of freedom of speech. So I urge everyone to fight alongside all our cable access providers. Our great senator here, Jeff will speak in a minute from MMA, but continue to write your congresspeople to let them know that this is so important. We cannot lose this critical funding. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. Now we're going to hear from Jeff Beckwith from the Mass Municipal Association. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Senator. This is an example of why community programming is so critically important. Part of the vision that Senator Markey, then Congressman Markey, had when decades ago he was making sure that the cable industry that was just being formed and organized in a way that was responsive to the communities of this nation and of Massachusetts, of course. And also that the cable companies, in receiving this opportunity to lay wires on public ways, to use the public property to build an infrastructure that would make them billions of dollars, that the cable companies themselves had an obligation to make sure that this new industry presented citizens, residents, everyone with the broadest array, the most diverse array of information sources and services. These pillars of being accountable to communities and providing citizens and residents and groups with access to share information. Those are the pillars of the Cable Act as it was originally crafted, and the foundation upon which those pillars have stood has been the cable access programming, the PEG programming, because that's provided transparency, access, voices for people. And what's the issue today? The cable companies that are making billions of dollars are concerned about supporting with millions of dollars that they already recover from the subscribers in the cable bill, the kind of programming that allows cable companies to provide value and service to the community. We're talking about values of democracy because cable company and cable access support open meetings. They support the select board nowadays, or counselors going to meetings and talking and making sure that the voices and the positions that they hold are heard all throughout the community. And then that gives other people an opportunity to look in and decide whether or not to get involved and to weigh in. Candidates forums, election nights, local groups hold fundraisers. Over 1,400 individuals and groups have commented just from Massachusetts in opposition to the FCC's proposed rules. One of those comments was from a local Rotary Club that said that over the past 20 years, they have hosted a fundraiser that's been aired on their local cable station. They've raised $1 million for local charities and international causes. They would not have raised a fraction of that without cable access to essentially involve the entire community. So we're talking about supporting causes, charities, education, youth, seniors, democracy. And why would the cable companies want to, for the sake of saving a few $1 million, undermine that? Well, because they don't want to have to provide that platform. But we're saying that platform is the cost of getting access to the public rights of way, getting access to the telecommunications industry of the future. Senator Markey has been there from the beginning. He's the most knowledgeable lawmaker in Washington, D.C. and in this nation on this issue, and he's fighting. He already has the entire congressional delegation in Massachusetts lined up, and he's working with his colleagues, but we all need to work with our colleagues and everyone we know in other states to make this movement in Massachusetts a national movement to protect democracy and to make sure that the industry is accountable. What? To the values of the Act, to our local communities, and to providing the broadest possible sources of information and services to the people of the United States. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you so much. I'm also joined by a great state representative from the city of Melrose, Paul Broder, right over here. Thank you, Paul, for coming. Thank you so much. And next to speak is Melinda Garfield, who is the president of Mass Access.
Thank you so much. I'll be very quick because it was all encompassing of what you just heard, but thank you again, Senator Markey, for creating an opportunity to make the public aware of the devastating effects the FCC's proposed rulemaking will have on the communities we serve. For the last 30 years plus, community television stations have delivered vital services helping residents of Massachusetts to be an informed citizenry, educating and empowering residents, and making it possible to get their messages distributed. In its proposed rulemaking, the FCC is attempting to undermine federal law, which protects free speech and repays local communities for the use of public rights-of-way. If enacted, the residents of the Commonwealth face the real possibility of losing access to their local government meetings, local sports, community events, along with the ability to take advantage of what are now considered free video services in their towns and cities. Massachusetts has the highest concentration of community media centers in the country. This means that not only will the services we provide cease to exist, but a measurable and meaningful economic impact will also be felt. Community media centers spend millions of dollars a year on technology equipment, facility rent, and small business services. We employ hundreds of people and give opportunities to millions of residents. None of this can be replaced with faceless internet platforms. The FCC would have you believe that community media is an antiquated ideal or a relic of a previous technological era, but they are simply ill-informed. Community media has evolved from its modest roots to become a staple in the fabric of the communities we serve, and its loss will be felt for decades to come. Across the country, local print media is disappearing, creating media deserts that only community media is equipped to bridge. Our coverage of local government is gavel to gavel, unedited and unbiased. It promotes transparency and allows municipal departments to reach community viewers to distribute vital information. Through production and airing of debates, forums, and candidate profiles, community media helps to educate voters before elections. It allows for documentation and archiving of municipal meetings, a service that would otherwise cost thousands of dollars annually. The Cable Act of 1984 was put into place so that Americans would have access to technology and a platform on which to express themselves. This was not just done simply for the novel idea that it was, but was done so that the companies making money using public rights-of-way on municipal land would have to give back to the communities where they sell their products. Even though they are not a law-making body, the FCC is attempting to redefine the parameters of the law to the detriment of the consumer. This is not just a community media issue. It is a community issue, a customer service issue. This proposed rulemaking would put more money into the hands of the multi-billion-dollar corporations while slashing services that consumers routinely pay for. I want to thank again Senator Markey for his tireless support and for the opportunity that he and his staff have afforded us today. The FCC was hoping to slide this rulemaking by the consumer quietly, underestimating the dedication that so many have to community media and the ideals that it represents. As citizens, we cannot afford to let the benefits that so many depend on be taken away so that the profits of so few are ever increased. We hope that through the support of the fine legislators like the ones we have representing the great state of Massachusetts, community media will be around for decades to come, supporting, entertaining, and educating the people of the Commonwealth.
So, we're proud here in Massachusetts that the shot heard round the world was fired here. And it was a perfect example of local communities rising up to have their voices heard. And that slogan, no taxation without representation, still lives in 351 cities and towns. They want to know what their public officials are doing. They want to see what the activity is at the schools and at their public interest groups and the nonprofits in their community. They want to make sure that the new arrivals in their community, whether they be Angolan, Haitian, Cape Verdean, you name it, that they have their voices heard as well. That's what is still alive and well. So we're the revolutionary state. And this is where the revolution begins against the Federal Communications Commission. This is where the fight begins, and we're going to spread this across the whole country, because at jeopardy is nothing less than democracy, nothing less than the voices of ordinary citizens in every single city and town in Massachusetts and the whole country, and we are in now for the fight. So we thank all of you for coming here today.